Hey guys, this is Sam. Thanks for listening to the JRP podcast. If you want to support this podcast, if you enjoy listening, check out our Patreon, $7 a month. There's a link down below in the Spotify or the YouTube description, or you can find the link on our Instagram at JamRoomCast. Let's get into the episode. Welcome back to the JRP podcast. I'm Sam.
I'm Illia.
We are here in beautiful Columbia, South Carolina, here at the JRP recording studio with our good friend Nigel Outzts. Nigel, thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
Nigel, why don't you just kind of inform the people on who you are, your musical background, what you're doing these days, sort of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm a student at USC right now, master's student at USC, finishing up in a couple weeks. I play trumpet, kind of playing around town a lot right now. Started out, like I was telling you guys, I was playing in middle school, playing trumpet a lot, and moved up to marching band, playing mellophone and stuff like that. After I stopped doing marching band in high school, I moved up to drum corps and did that for a couple years. Okay. And then I came here and I was doing wind ensemble for a semester. I did university band for a semester, and then I switched over to jazz about sophomore year around pandemic time. And I've been doing that since then. So I've been playing like a lot of trying to figure out how to play standards, trying to figure out how to play over changes, all that good stuff. So
nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. And you started on like classical piano when you were like really tiny,
right?
Yeah,
I was like 5. I remember I was like a kid growing up in church and all that stuff, and I would always go up after service and my parents were talking to everybody, and I would just like sit behind the piano player and just like watch her like, play all the stuff at the end. Man. And then my parents, like whenever they tore down our church, I think I was like 3 or 4, and they were moving the piano somewhere, so they just put the piano in the house.
Nice.
So I would come home after service and just like kind of peck around on it, and like, I didn't realize it then, but looking back on it, I was like, I was like memorizing the hymns and stuff and just like kind of going home and trying to peck around on it. So yeah, I feel like that was good for my oral memory at the start of everything.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So did you like take classical lessons as well? Or
Okay. Yeah, they put me in lessons, I think about a year or so after that, after they saw I was just like, so interested in it that it wasn't just like a passing thing.
Yeah.
Because I did have a lot of interest as a kid. Like I was bouncing around between every cartoon you could imagine, every type of everything.
Sure.
And it was like an obsessive amount of it too. So yeah, once they saw that I was interested in something that I guess could become a career, they were like, okay, cool, we're going to support this. We're going to put some effort behind it. And they've always done that too. Yeah. Even through like, the high school, college, drum corps, all that stuff. So
awesome. Yeah. That's so great to have some supportive parents with music stuff.
Yeah, man.
Because not everyone gets that for sure.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah, seriously. So do you remember being in classical piano lessons? Do you remember what that experience was like?
I remember using my right hand and being like, oh yeah, this is great. And then I remember the very first lesson that the teacher tried to get me to incorporate my left hand, and like I just couldn't do it. Like there was something about like I knew what was supposed to be happening, but it's like I couldn't get the left hand to like do the things that I was trying to make it do. And that happened for I think 4 or 5 lessons, and that was when I quit.
Man,
so,
wow,
yeah,
that's funny.
I feel like I have like a lot of the same problems now with like with trumpet stuff. It's like I know what I want to do, but whenever I can't do it, it's like whenever I have to go and like find somebody to tell me why I can't do it. So.
Yeah, that's so real. I remember I all the time I get these experiences like I hear a certain like lick or melody or line in my head, and I try to play it, and I just like butcher it. I'm like, I wish my hands would like do what I want to, make the music I want to make in my head.
You can hear it, but you can't play it.
Yeah, that's so frustrating. It's like one of the most frustrating things I feel like with music and stuff and improv.
It's like if you're trying to talk and it's like you can't formulate your sentence. It's
exactly.
Like you know the thoughts you're trying to say, but you can't communicate it to the people that you're talking to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like it's like frustrating and exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you were in a marching band in middle school.
Yep, I started in 7th grade on trumpet, and then I switched over to mellophone the Christmas parade of that year, and then I played mellophone until my junior year of high school because we just didn't have mellophone players. It was I went to 96 high school, which is a super small town up in Greenwood. Okay. There were about 400 people in the school, or in the high school that is. I would say probably 300-400 in the middle school too, and out of that there were 100 people in the band almost every year. So that was kind of crazy for us because everywhere you went you kind of knew somebody. Like there was never that experience of like, oh, I'm a high school freshman, I don't know anybody in the school. It's like you've known everybody the whole time. So that was super good for like getting involved in things socially. And it was also super good for my musical career because I got to play different instruments, got to play different parts.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. It seems like I remember like at Lexington High School where I went to school, like the marching band community was like so tight. Like they was their own like world kind of. There's this one massive marching band room, sort of like a couple halls away from like the main cafeteria space, and you'd go in there and it's just like a different whole like world and community, and it's just kind of interesting to see like how strong that like community of people was. Like they were just so tight and kind of have their own world.
Well, you spend so much time together. It's like, you know, you do like the band camp thing, and like that's one thing, but then it's like you go and you start doing competitions, and then you have to drive to those competitions. So it's like us, most of the competitions were out here somewhere in Charleston or somewhere up in like at least 2 hours from 96. So we're getting up at like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning to go and rehearse before the thing, and then we're loading up props, and then we're getting on the bus at like 10. And we're bussing out, and we're getting somewhere at 2 or 3, and we're getting home at like 1 or 2.
Man.
So it's like spending like that amount of time on your weekend in high school, weekend in middle school, you know, you get close to people.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I used to I was in marching band, quote unquote, for 1 year because they needed like theater kids to. We did like a zombie themed thing, and so they had theater kids play zombies. So it was.
That's funny.
But that year I really understood like, oh, this is why people that are in band are the way that they are.
Yep.
Not meaning that in a negative way whatsoever, but it's like why y'all are so tight and why, because I lived that schedule and I was like, this is actually insane. Like I thought that the theater schedule was like rigorous and demanding, but it's like this is a whole other level of that. So that's crazy.
And then once I got to drum corps, it was like a whole nother level of that, because it's like you go from getting the chance of like, you know, well, it's just Saturday, to like now you leave in May and you come home in August, and it's like there's no amount of time that you're not with these people. Like you're living in dorms with these people on a campus that you don't go to, and then when you leave the campus, you're living on a bus with these people, or in like a random high school every other night, whatever. So it was super fun, but it's like, again, one of those things, like you get super close with people. I was just texting in a group chat with them like yesterday, and it's been 5 years since I've seen them. So it's like it's a super cool thing to have those types of relationships.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. When you were playing trumpet or mellophone in marching band, did you kind of have that thought of like, this is what I want to do with my whole life, this is what I want to study, or did you not really like feel that way when you were in those programs?
I feel like that was kind of like it's like, you know, when everybody asks you like what's your favorite subject in school, it's like that's when my answer kind of shifted from whatever it had to be like the thing I was doing the best in to like okay, well, I just kind of like doing this other thing, and I'm also doing it in school now. So it was like I think marching band was the first time, because it was only a year after I started really playing trumpet, so we kind of got in there pretty quick. But I think that was the first switch for me of like, okay, I can actually take this thing and just keep doing it if I find a way to do that. And I remember whenever I was we had like a senior board in high school, and they would like always ask us like, you know, where are you gonna go to school, and what are you gonna major in, like what do you want to do with that, all that type of stuff. And I put up there, like I remember I said I was gonna go to USC and do music. I didn't apply anywhere else, and I didn't do anything else. So I knew I was gonna do that, but I didn't know what career that meant for me. Like I just kind of knew I wanted to do something in the musical field. Like I didn't really care what that meant. For the most part. Yeah. I just knew I didn't want to have to go and do like science or English or social studies or anything anymore. So and then I found out you still have to do it in college, so that kind of sucked.
Yeah.
Gen Eds.
Yeah, man.
I could rant about Gen Eds for a long time.
Couldn't we all?
Yeah, we've been on an anti-college streak on this podcast for a while. Yeah, that's not good.
And then I'm doubling
down. Go
to
school if it's the right decision for you.
Yeah, I never want to be like anti-college. Like it didn't work for me, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't work for everybody. Yeah. And like
I am anti-Gen Ed.
I think Gen Eds are the reason I didn't make it through college.
I think for me, it's just like it gave me time. Like both of the degrees that I had, or that I have, are going to have, however you phrase that. I got just to buy myself time. Like I remember distinctly after I was about to graduate from my undergrad, whenever they gave me the offer for the GA position and everything, and I was like, I don't really want to go back to school. But I can't just turn down a free master's degree. So I kind of had to do that, but it bought me some time to sit here and figure out. If I wouldn't have done that, I don't know if I would have ever had a chance to be in Columbia and go out to jam sessions and stuff like that. I didn't start doing that until the beginning of that year. So that was a new thing. My first gig came like a week after graduation, like playing regularly with IU. Shout out to Vino. Nice. So that was really how everything started for us. Like I bought a flugelhorn that week, and it was just crazy, man.
That's awesome. So you transitioned from marching band focused stuff to jazz. You said sophomore year, junior year?
Yeah, about sophomore year. I remember we were me and my roommates went to Panama City Beach, and that was the week of spring break my sophomore year. And we were out the whole week. We got to Thursday and we started hearing about like closures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And on the way home, it's like we're listening to the radio and everything is shutting down. And we're like, oh, okay, that's crazy.
I remember that.
That was also the first trip that I'd ever taken my trumpet anywhere, like to just on the premise of I need to make sure I'm practicing while I'm not at home.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I need to like make sure I figure all my stuff out. That was the first semester that I was spending in the actual jazz study school and all that, because I had to do the audition the semester before with the faculty and all that. So I just switched out of a composition track of general music.
Okay. Man. So obviously, like, I'm sure there were a lot of other factors with it being like the COVID era, like early COVID era.
Yeah.
But what was the transition like going from like kind of marching band focused study to like jazz focused study?
It was super hard for me because I didn't really understand theory that well. I think if I would have understood theory a lot more at the time, then it would have been a lot easier. But I just kind of didn't know what I was doing. Like we were getting parts, and it's like, you know, I could understand, I could read music, I could understand what the key signature was, and I could understand, like, you know, how all that stuff was working. Sure. But if you were to ask me, like, what is this in a major or a minor key? I don't know. Like, if you were to ask me, am I playing the third, the fifth, the root? I don't know. Like, none of that stuff mattered until I got to college. Yeah. So with that being my sophomore year, I was just finishing up Theory 4 / Jazz Theory 1, and I was lost in that sense. And then we go to online classes, so it's like now I can't ask you a question in person. Like, that's, you know, tough. There's no real connection happening there. So as far as practicing and everything, I got really good at like sitting on YouTube and like scrolling through transcriptions and just figuring out a way to play through things, because that's the only way you could do it.
Definitely. Oh man, that's a brutal time to like get really, or like kind of force yourself into jazz, is also when like the world had to kind of figure out how to do like online remote learning and stuff. It was also a really bad time to figure out that you're not as good at the thing that you thought you were good at, that you thought you were. Yeah. Because it's like, you know, you can read music, you know, you can like play the things that are on the page, but when it comes to like, okay, well now you don't have anything on the page, play like over these things that make it coherent. Definitely. That became a completely different challenge. Yeah, I feel like those like early pandemic days also just caused a lot of change in a lot of musicians' life with how they like interacted with music and playing music. Because like for me, that was like I kind of like had sort of a different experience, but it was like, you know, I was studying biology at the time. In pandemic, I was like, my time was split between like online learning, playing a Call of Duty, what is the Warzone? There we go. Like Dude, yeah, love that Call of Duty, and then like just shedding like electric guitar for like hours and hours a day. And I kind of had this realization, was like, man, now that I'm just like at home at my parents' house and I have these like, I'm like really thinking about like what I am using my time for. It's like, I like guitar a lot more than I like biology. And I also have some connections in Columbia. And so that was like the first time I realized like, oh man, like I really, really like music. Like me as an individual, like this is really who I am and this is like what I want to do. And so, but I feel like, I don't know. I feel like every musician in the pandemic kind of had like something kind of changed with their musicianship, you know? Yeah. I mean, I remember I had the, because my laptop is horrible now. Like I should probably get a new one. But every time I open it up, it has like all of like my old apps or whatever pop up. And there's still an email to my old advisor from like that semester, like before we left for what's it called? I was like about to drop out of the music school. So I was like, hey, like, how do I like, I already had like the email draft and everything. So it still like pops up on my laptop every time I pull it up. It's like a eerie-ish reminder, but it's kind of cool. So yeah, man, that's wild. Yeah. Yeah. So obviously, you know, you are like in a graduate program right now, or you just finished, or are you I'll be finishing up in 3 weeks. Okay, nice. Graduation's May 4th. So congrats. Yeah. Congrats. Awesome. Yeah, we went to your master's, so that was beautiful experience. Yeah. You, so
Thanks
let's
for the
say
graphic too.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, working on my graphic design.
Oh yeah.
You posted that, I was like, that looks so familiar. I'm like, oh, Sam made that.
And then he taught me how to use Canva, so it was like a 2-in-1. Now I don't have to bug him anymore to promote my gigs.
Oh, this man loves Canva. If anyone has Canva questions, like
yeah, that's funny. So I was gonna ask though, like if there's like a junior, senior in high school that was like all about the trumpet specifically, like playing jazz or playing like a marching band context, or playing pop or like whatever it is, like classical, and they're like, man, I really want to do trumpet, like play it professionally. I want to do music professionally. Nigel, should I go get a like education from like a music school like USC or maybe like Berkeley and Boston or any of these other like really famous music education programs? Like, how would you advise them to work through that question?
I would take that a track by track basis. I think that the school environment for the people that you meet and the things that the connections that you make is really helpful. But if you don't take advantage of those things, I don't know how much you're getting out of it that you wouldn't get out of like a private teacher,
sure,
or even just like going on YouTube at this point, man. Like it's kind of crazy how quickly that whole thing is blown up. Like I don't remember that being as much of an option when I was in high school. It's like you could like hop on YouTube and like find somebody with a 45-minute lesson of how to like starter guitar or like starter trumpet or starter whatever. And you don't have that person to interact with, but at the same time we've mostly all been through a period now where we have had to do that. So it's not like our brains aren't wired for it to some extent. If you're trying to do pop stuff and like party band stuff like that, I would definitely say try to go to school and like meet some people. But if you're already tied into a community, I don't know how much that would help you. Like, don't rip yourself out of that type of a situation.
Sure.
If you're trying to do more jazz stuff, get good at I mean, if you're trying to do anything, get good at fundamentals. Like, just get good at playing the trumpet first.
Sure.
So, if you can go and find a good private teacher that can just teach you how to play the trumpet first, all the styles kind of fall inside of that. It's no matter what you want to do. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, I remember like, I went to a certain school up in northwestern South Carolina that I won't mention because of the city I live in currently. But like, I mean, I there was like zero musical community up there besides like me and my college band buddies. Laundry Dog, shout out Laundry Dog. But like when I moved to Columbia, like I never was involved in like USC or like the School of Music here or anything like that. I just kind of got connected via like being around certain like teaching schools around the city and like going to jams, going to events, going to the Joint, just like hanging out and meeting people. So I definitely believe in like if you work hard enough at it and you're like cool, you can definitely just like meet people in whatever city you're in.
And more like so the latter.
Yeah.
You're cool.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a huge part of it for sure.
We say that on every pod at this point. Is like you just have to be a cool person.
I mean, we were talking about that in masterclass yesterday or 2 days ago at USC. It's just like you that even if you don't have like all of that stuff together, like if you don't have the fundamentals together and everything, but it's like you show up and you prepared for it and you're cool, you're good.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like you got to be a good hang first.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, that's so true. Like if you're a professional, if you're good at your instrument, and if you're a good hang, like you will be successful.
Because there's always going to be somebody better than you.
Always,
and there's always going to be somebody working harder than you, whatever that means.
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, I mean, if you're cool and the people that you're playing with like you, that's kind of what matters.
It's a huge part of it for sure. So obviously we saw that Masters recital. Was it 2 weeks ago? 1 week ago? When was it?
It was the 24th. I don't know.
Okay,
today's the 5th.
That's about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, about 2 weeks. Man,
week and a half. What was that experience like? So obviously it was you. It was our boy Andres McNeil, Chris Phelps, Ben Eidson, and then was it Ayush? I think right.
Ayush,
what was that experience like planning that, doing that performance? Like, what is that experience like in the USC School of Music?
Man, I think we before the thing, like whenever we were planning it back in January, we had like the first lesson that I had for the semester and everything. It's like, okay, what do you want your recital to look like? And I just remember telling Dr. White, I was like, I just kind of wanted to feel like another gig. Like I don't want to have to go into this thing and feel like I'm preparing for, like we were talking about a minute ago, preparing for this super big thing that like afterwards I'm gonna have this whole revelation. I don't want it to be like that. Just like I want to show up, play, and go. Because I already knew I had like a wedding the day before, and I knew I had like a bunch of stuff going on as far as school was going on. So I just didn't want to have to think about that.
Yeah.
So I think as far as that's concerned, we were able to achieve that, at least on my end of it. I was able to come into it and just kind of play it and not really look too much at it like it was anything other than another time playing.
Yeah.
I just kind of had to dress up, and we were in a different room. But I mean, the planning process of it was definitely a lot more intensive than I'm used to, just because we like to show up and know the songs and play stuff. And that wasn't what I was able to do for that, because that's like, I guess, not how a recital works. So we had to pick the songs ahead of time. I made sure I picked some stuff that I didn't know so that I could have a good challenge for the semester.
Yeah.
We had to do an arrangement of some stuff, so I had to figure out how that was going to work.
Sure.
It was a lot of fun, man. I mean, I played with those guys a lot, so it wasn't super hard once we picked the material to put it together.
Sure.
It was just a matter of, when are we going to do this? We got together, I think, maybe 3 times before the recital, and those were all just like, let's run the head real quick. Let's make sure we're good on the timing here. Let's figure out what solo order we want. Let's figure out what kind of feel we want in the solos. Other than that, it was just showing up and playing.
Man, nice. That's interesting.
There was obviously a lot of like chemistry between you guys. Like I could tell that like, okay, these people play together a lot. Just really, it was amazing. It was a great performance.
Yeah. And I appreciated that my teachers let me bring them in too, because it's like I think Chris graduated from here, and that was it. Like, other than that, I go to school here. So everybody else was just like a band member. Yeah. So I appreciated that they let me do that.
Definitely. Man, Chris Phelps is just such a ridiculously nasty drummer. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh.
So good, man.
Yeah, he's so good. That whole band was just incredible, dude. Like, you guys were ripping for sure. Man. That was really fun.
Playing with Chris in big band was so much fun too. Whenever we were in undergrad together, just because I guess we never like perceived it until it's like one of those things you don't know what you got till it's going type of situation of like oh man, like Chris was like so much fun to play next to, and then it's like everybody else is so much fun to play next to too. But it's like you get those experiences, and then now I only play with him like every couple of months. So it's like it's a good reunion.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Bittersweet, I guess.
Yeah, we also saw Chris's recital, and like up until then we had played with him, and he would always be like, oh no, I don't take solos and I don't whatever, and then we saw his recital and we were like, so you can't tell us that anymore. You can't.
He was the exact same way on the prep for that stuff, because I remember we were doing the rehearsals for his recital, and he would be like, yeah man, we're gonna play this song, and then I'm probably gonna solo, but let's just play the head real quick. And then I'm just like, okay, well, like, how long are you going to solo? Like, you know, because the number one issue that we ever worry about for any recital is time. It's like, we have to make it at least 50 minutes worth of music. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, I'm just going to solo real quick, and then it'll be whatever, and we'll just head out. And I'm just like, okay, well, how long do I need? Because if I'm trying to catch you on the head out, I don't want to, like, jump in at the wrong time. I need to figure out, is this like I need to check out? Like, is this like a free drum solo? Are you still keeping the form? Like, what's going on? And he's like, I'll just solo. And I should have just trusted it more then, and like not stressed out about it, because like you said, the actual product of it was fine. Like he's such a good soloer. And he knows how to bring a band back in. I think that's like
he does. He's really good at that.
That's so valuable, man. Yeah. Like drummers sometimes just like lose people for fun, and he doesn't do that. So.
Yeah. You always like feel the one, and then does he like does the like counting back in. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, that is so helpful. Mm-hmm. I'm like, as a simple-minded guitarist who loses the one pretty much as soon as the drum solo starts, like, it's extremely helpful for me.
That plus the musician eyes, man.
Yeah.
He's like,
gotcha. Yeah. That's so funny. So I definitely like, a lot of my background is, you know, guitar, piano, like drums, like pretty rock, pop, contemporary stuff. So I'm gonna ask you this question. I mean it like half joking, half serious. How does a trumpet work?
That is a complicated question. Everybody tells me that it's air. I don't know how much I believe that, and I'm sure as I get older, I'll probably subscribe more to that school of thought. But right now, everybody says it's air. I mean, I think it's about finding a good balance between like not having too much tension because like you have to like buzz into the mouthpiece to make that work. Okay. And then outside of that, it's like how are you filtering the level of air that's coming out? It's about air pressure, air direction, all that stuff. Okay. And then you got to make sure you're not jamming the mouthpiece into your face, because if you're gonna, somebody came into USC whenever they were hiring for the new trumpet job, and they were explaining how like a buzz actually works, because your lips aren't pressed together; they're just kind of like slightly apart, and the air column is what's making them vibrate.
Gotcha.
So creating that air column and placing it is kind of the hard part of trumpet, and you got to make sure you're not jamming your face to where you're not able to do that.
Okay.
So, and as you get more tired, as a gig goes on, like last night I was playing at Hampton Street. That's our longest gig. It's like a 4-hour duo gig. So I'm like playing.
It's a long gig.
Yeah. I mean, we get breaks, but it's like a 4-hour duo gig, and I'm playing trumpet. So it's like as the gig goes on, I like feel my tone declining. I feel like it like physically gets harder, and then it's a smaller restaurant with a bunch of like hard surfaces.
Yeah.
So if I'm playing a trumpet and there are people trying to have a conversation or people trying to order food, that's kind of hard to do in that type of a room. So now I'm like playing at a very low dynamic with all of these added stressors. So it's just kind of it's hard to figure out, but I don't know. I'm working on it.
Sure.
Yeah. And a lower dynamic is a lot harder when like it works the same way with voice, I would imagine, where like when you have to sing quieter, it's so much harder to do than just singing loud.
It is.
Because you can just let the air go at that point, but then when you have to sing quietly, you have to have a lot more like diaphragmatic control. And I know when you play like trumpet or something like that, you also have to like be aware of the diaphragm and how you're breathing and all of that.
Okay.
No, yeah, that was the thought.
I just hear there's a lot of stuff with the diaphragm with like the range stuff too. That's something I haven't figured out yet.
Okay.
But it's like there's like a wedge breathing type of thing where it's like if you can figure out how to get your diaphragm to like compress the air like that whenever it's coming out, then you can play higher and be better at the trumpet. But I again haven't figured that out. So.
Man.
So on a very literal level, so how many octaves can most trumpet players play? Like what's the average kind of?
The bottom note is like a low E, like a concert E. I would say the highest that you're ever like required to play for most settings would be a B flat, 3 octaves above that, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
3 octaves, that's 12 notes per octave. That's 36 notes. But you only got 3 buttons. How's that work?
Man, so there's like a pattern. Like
okay.
you go from like the bottom and you have the 1 2 3 1 2 2 3 1 2 1 2 open, and then after that it kind of repeats itself, but it cuts a number off each time.
Okay.
I don't know how much more I can explain it like that without just like literally listing out all of the notes and all the fingerings.
Yeah.
But the way I think about it is just like at the bottom of the register you have all of those combinations, and then as you go up because it doesn't cover a whole octave. That covers like a tritone, I think.
Okay.
So going from that is you have two sections of that, 2 tetrachords, I guess, of
gotcha
moving through those combinations, and then as you get higher on the instrument, you can kind of get a lot of alternate fingerings.
Okay.
So that's
interesting.
That's been a lot of fun to experiment with. I didn't realize that tuning was affected so much by alternate fingerings until pretty recently, whenever I started playing a lot more duo gigs and realizing how to tune just specific notes were.
Yeah.
So I was having to find some workarounds for stuff like that.
Yeah. I'd never think about like intonation being an issue with like trumpet. That's super interesting.
Yeah, I try to. That's another thing that, like, with the whole lips thing, like you try not to adjust for it, but at a certain point, you just you start compensating. You know, and I don't know how much it's going to change. I'd like to get a new horn sometime soon, but I don't know how much my tuning tendencies are going to change. I'm sure a lot. But once I get a new horn or a new mouthpiece, anything like that, things just kind of start to get wonky. So
yeah, man, yeah. So right now you teach marching band at Dreer, right? Yep. What is that experience like? How much of it is like just the pure knowledge and experience of music, and how much of it is the like challenge and experience of like teaching people?
I feel like 95% of that experience for me is kind of autopilot. Like I just kind of show up and look around, and I'm just like, okay, well, what can I help somebody with? Like if you're struggling with this one specific thing, how can I give you a concise piece of information that's going to make you either think about this differently or fix it? I mean, like, you know, I'm not really too much of a teacher at heart, I would say. It's just kind of whenever I have an experience doing something, I don't really mind passing that experience along as best I can. So
yeah, interesting.
It's a lot of fun, man. Like I never thought I would get so much enrichment out of teaching until I started teaching there. That's the one school I've been willing to go back to. Yeah.
So you're teaching, I guess, like high school age people.
Mm-hmm.
That could be like a really good age to like, you know, mentor and like help people figure out what they want to do with their lives and stuff. That could be really like enriching for sure.
Very impactful time, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The hard part for me is like they have like sometimes they'll like ask like, do you do private lessons? And I'm always like, no, I don't, because I just there's something weird about trying to do a private lesson in this space for me. Like I don't feel like I'm old enough to like teach you anything in that level, but at the same time, that's not real. You know what I mean? Like that's all like the imposter syndrome stuff and all that. So
I mean you're about to have a graduate degree in music. I feel like you're definitely qualified,
but it's like at the same time I'm like 24, so it's like it feels weird to at any point in time submit an application to a college and be like, hey, I want to go teach your jazz band, because like I'm a couple of years older than your students. And then for me it's even harder because I didn't do jazz growing up. I literally switched into it, like I said, my sophomore year, so it feels like I don't even have a full 4-year degree in jazz yet, but I'm like I have 2 full degrees in it. So.
Man. So you've played trumpet in like obviously a jazz context, like a lot of we're talking about right now, and also like you said there's like a classical context that you've played some trumpet in or horns in general.
So in high school we had like, you know, a bunch of classical stuff just because I mean I guess our high school was really more marching band focused, but we had concert performance assessment and like, you know, all that stuff, so we made sure we played our classical rep. And then I did all state and region band, all that good stuff. So those were always the trips that I got to go and realize how much more other schools were doing than us as far on that front of like people are really learning like grade 5, grade 6 classical music and like taking through AP theory classes in high school. And we're like playing the same stuff we've been playing since 6th grade on like our senior concerts. So it's like it's a huge dichotomy of things. And then you get to college. And I remember I was sitting in like my music theory 1 class, and they were just like, oh yeah, by the way, there's a entry exam. And I was like, I don't know what major and minor is. So I went and studied. I was like busting my butt to like study over this theory exam, and kind of wish I didn't at this point, because I just didn't know what I was getting myself into. It was so much, man. Yeah,
it's tricky. And then also you like play in a pop context with Station 7, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I would love I would love, I guess specifically like for you to compare like your experience like playing a jazz gig, let's say like the Joint, you know, in the early Friday night slot, versus like playing a Station 7 gig out on location with the big like 11-piece wedding band.
I would say the difference between both of those things and then the classical realm would be the written music versus the non-written music to an extent. Because you don't really engage with the written music, in my opinion, the same way in the classical context as you do on like a pop gig or a jazz gig.
Yeah.
Like even whenever I was doing a university band or wind ensemble here at USC, it was just like we were playing the parts and we knew the composers, we knew what we were supposed to do, but there was no real connection of like I need to internalize this. It was just like I need to play this other piece for this other concert. Whenever I'm doing stuff for like a jazz gig or like a pop gig with Station 7, it's like they're usually songs. Like they're like popular songs of stuff that like, you know, we, at least for me, I know or like to listen to.
Yeah.
So like the jazz stuff, I'm always, if I'm playing the 6:30 to 9:30 slot, I'm at the point now where I can just show up and call tunes.
Yeah.
So I'll just ask you like, okay, let's play this, and we're doing most things in original keys, but there's no impetus of like I need to go and make sure I'm playing this one thing perfectly.
Yeah.
It's like we all know the framework of the song. How are we going to make it work? Station 7's a little bit more like the classical thing in the sense of like we're going to do this the same way every time. But that's also to the benefit of like, you know, the people that are trying to have a good time at their party and all that.
Yeah.
Right.
Super easy for me because now we have in-ears and all that stuff. We have charts. I'm thinking about it as like I know these songs and now I'm just playing these licks on these songs as opposed to I'm learning this piece of music that we have to play for this specific thing.
Definitely.
So
interesting.
I guess it's really more of a mental barrier. Like nothing really changes on the execution side of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Except for articulation.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
You got to be a lot more direct and on top of the beat for like the pop and jazz stuff.
Okay.
There's like the internal drummer that people talk about that you have in those settings, and I think that is something that's taken for granted because that's not real in classical music.
Yeah.
It's like you see the guy do the duh, so it's like you have to wait for the one, and it's like you're in marching band. Marching band is kind of what taught me it, but pop gigs and jazz gigs really reinforce like one is here, two is like you're gonna be on the downbeat or on the offbeat. But you can't exist in like this gradient of time like you can in classical music sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. What are your like top 4 pop songs to play on trumpet at like wedding band gigs?
Man, that In the Stone intro is so fun. I feel like I can't put it on my favorites list because I'm bad at it, but it's fun. I like it. September when we actually play the horn lines because it's a good challenge.
Yeah, that's such a good horn part.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it's another one of those high things though, so I got to figure out my breathing for that.
Yeah.
Uptown Funk, super fun, and Levitating. Levitating by Dua Lipa.
What do you do on the horn for Levitating? I'm trying to think of like because that part's not in the original song.
Yeah, Sebastian Strevin, shout out him. He wrote a part for that.
That's awesome.
Nice.
We played that in Station 7.
That's
and
cool.
now I just kind of show up in every party band setting that I'm in. I just kind of do it on autopilot. Yeah. And then every horn player's like, "What'd you just do?" And I'm like, I didn't even realize.
I don't even remember.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Man.
Can't take credit for this.
That's so cool. Dang.
We play so many songs where it's like we just do it in a different way, and then like we'll be at the jam and someone's like, "Oh, let's play this song," and then we forgot like, "Oh, we added that part. That's not part of the song," or like we like play this differently or whatever it may be.
Me and I used to doing a lot of that last night. It was just like we started playing a song, and then he would just like kind of play a bridge to a different song, and next thing we know, we're in a different song, and I was like, man, like. It's cool to be on that level with people, like just like be able to be in those performance habits, as opposed to, I guess it's another difference between the classical music stuff. If you start playing off script, that's not going to work. You can do that in those settings. Like Station 7 is scripted because they want to be scripted, but if they chose not to be, we'd be fine.
You could definitely open up.
Yeah.
Definitely. That's awesome. It's always kind of tricky with wedding band stuff, trying to figure out like how much improv and like jam you can get away with, you know? My favorite thing is like the cocktail hour, you can play Dock of the Bay for 10 minutes and just kind of like noodle over Dock because no one really cares what you're doing, you know?
And it's super cool kind of like whenever you get later into the party too and they start like throwing out solos through the in-ears because this is like, okay, like who's going to be next? Like it's kind of like a anxiety game or something.
Yeah,
I don't know the good analogy for that.
Yeah.
Never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun being like because I kind of like MD for us right now, and it's kind of fun just like like keep everybody on their toes. Like,
Yeah.
all right, Braden, drum solo, go. You know,
Yeah, it's like you hear your name like 2 beats before you're supposed to start solo, and it's just like,
I'm terrible about that. Like I give people no heads up.
But at the same time, I think that's kind of like you don't get a chance to freak yourself out. So it's just like, oh, okay, well, we're in this now. Let's do it. And,
exactly.
And you get a chance to kind of trust your instinct and figure out what you're capable of.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The only time it doesn't really work is when you try to cue me back in for like a verse or whatever, and it's like the verse started 2 beats ago, and like
yeah, that's tough.
It's just not like that's not like really your job to be thinking about. You know what I mean?
It's funny.
You made a joke a few weeks ago in practice. You were like, "Hey, can you just read my mind for when I'm done with this guitar solo?"
Yeah, it's also like and sometimes like I feel like with performing solos in songs and stuff live, like if the solo overlaps like just a tiny bit with the verse or the chorus, it's like it has a certain like energy, but it's really tough to communicate that to like overlap a certain way.
Yep.
And
that's another thing I love playing with Outzts so much with, because it's like we're at the point now where we can kind of do that, and it kind of is what it is. Like, well, even if that means that we have to forego, like if the form is standard AABA on like a jazz song or something like that, that means we have to forego a couple of the A's. Yeah, we just kind of come back in on the bridge on the head out. Like, that's cool too. Definitely, just a matter of how are we gonna navigate this thing. Yeah, it's a really communal, conversational type of thing.
Yeah, that can be so fun.
I do feel like you and I are pretty good at that, but there would be times we'll play with like a different bass player or something, and I'll come in and I completely cut off the rest of their solo, and I feel so terrible. Yeah, but
there's also like such a difference in etiquette, like in different bands, because like in some bands, like the etiquette is like you get 8 bars. That's it. Period. Like we're cutting you off at 8 bars no matter what you're doing, because that's how we want to do the song. Yep. But then other bands, it's like people are just like watching you and ready for you to cue everybody back in. Yep. And I've just like, it's funny like playing with new like different bands, especially bands where they're like they're so used to playing with a specific, like there's no subs, it's like only these 4 people or whatever, because like they've developed their own sort of like etiquette and communication with solos and stuff, and you just have to like keep up. I remember there's one time like when I played guitar with Third Floor, we actually won a battle of the bands. That was fun. Hey. That was a good time. But I remember and there was like the monitoring out was kind of rough. I think they were just like limited on how many wedges they had. So like I couldn't hear vocals like at all where I was standing, which is totally fine because like I wasn't singing or anything. But I was like soloing, and there's a moment where like I just kind of realized that Ryan had started singing again, and I was like, "Oh, how long have I been soloing into his like verse? That's not good. Probably should not be doing that."
It's a weird thing, man. It's like you don't perceive it until it's happening, and then you're like, "Oh," but it's like you're so in the moment, like
And like I always default to like wanting to. I mean, obviously, like there's exceptions to this, but like I usually default to like wanting to like start a solo kind of like small and then build it and like have this like point, this crest, and then drop it down a little bit, and then going back into the song. And so it's always like kind of funny when you like don't really know if you can do that with a different band or not,
Yeah. A lot of that for me has been like reading situations. Like whenever that's one thing that I feel like has been the easiest thing of soloing with Station 7 is because like you don't think that your solo is going to be 47 bars. That's not happening. Yeah. You're not playing like a super extended thing. But you're also not getting like cut off if you're doing something. Like it's a super good like gradient of like you're gonna play this solo for about this amount of time. Yeah. Jazz gigs get a lot more, and even some party bands get a lot more hairy with like, okay, well we're just gonna wait until you're done. And I'm like, well, sometimes you can build the thing and like make it musical and like that's cool, but then sometimes I'm just trying to like get in and get out, and you're not giving me an opportunity to do that. Yeah. When we play like breakers, that's definitely like with the regulars, definitely was like get out, With our band, it's like it gets real. Like I take some long solos.
It depends, because and then when you're playing at like a college bar or something, you get a couple of drunk kids that are like, oh, we're like all of a sudden they're just really keyed into like the bass player or the drummer. Yeah. We've gotten that pretty consistently. Where like the love will just kind of cycle around the band. But then you're like, okay, we didn't plan on it, but now we're gonna have this person do a solo because they're like all over the drummer right now. So like let's have Braden take a solo or whatever it may be. Definitely. You got to be able to read that situation as well.
That's what makes the best band leaders.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite things is just to really like read and interact with the audience. But the only thing is at college bars they get a little. That's like they will. Well, It's the requests. It's like, I promise y'all will like our set list. I've started saying that at gigs when they start like really requesting stuff. I'm like, I promise you guys, you're gonna like our songs. Like we picked out good stuff.
That's true. I guess I haven't really done too much of the college bar stuff. Now that you mention it, I've played at like a lot of music clubs and like those types of situations. But when it comes to just like, I guess the music gigs that I do like that are like restaurants and stuff like that. But and a couple of times, whenever we played on Wednesday, somebody came up and asked if I knew any Herb Alpert. Now, I don't, but I also know who that is. So it's like
definitely.
That's not what we were like. If we're playing jazz standards, we're not going to play Herb Alpert because that's like a Chuck Mangione type of vibe and like all the Grover Washington stuff. But the requests can get out of hand.
Yeah,
I think the worst ones come whenever I'm just like the background person. I have to watch the front man deal with that. So that's
definitely.
Lately, it's been Creep.
We've had a lot of Creep requests.
Oh my gosh, they've been like relentless with Creep.
But y'all have like an arrangement of Creep, right?
We
used to do the
Postmodern Jukebox.
Yes,
kinda.
Is that the one that's like in minor or something, or am I thinking about Dreams?
No, we have
Dreams.
Yeah, we have a Dreams arrangement. I really like. It's like a weird that's fun.
Last time we went in between the major and minor, like we started in the original and then you moved it to minor, which threw me off a little bit, but I was ready for it.
I will never forget the first time I heard that. That was mind blowing.
Oh man, that's so fun.
Now that we're talking about it though, Trumpet would go so hard at breakers.
Yeah, you want to play breakers with us at some point?
Hey, let me know.
That'd be a great time. Oh man, that'd be so fun. Oh man, so I wanted to ask you, what are some of your like wildest gig stories that you've experienced since gigging?
It's been fun lately. Yeah,
since gigging, man.
If you got some
wildest gig story. What's the craziest thing that happened? I feel like something that happens fairly regularly that I didn't expect to happen was how many people like end up on a chair like being passed around at a wedding. That was
interesting.
That's been pretty frequent actually. I think almost every other. There's so many things that I feel like I'm like jaded to now because like I've just kind of seen it so much. Like luckily I've been in a lot of situations fairly quickly. So but that being said, I'm experiencing all these things and I'm not really processing what's happening. So that's probably some of the craziest stuff. There's been one time that we had to play the German polka thing, or Jewish polka thing. So that was kind of hard.
I imagine there was also a wedding where they were holding them up on chairs.
Yep. That was another one. That was another one when everybody's being passed around on the chairs.
That looks so fun.
There've been a couple of like beachside things that have been cool, but cool. I don't know if that'd be classified as crazy. Most of the crazy stuff I just is like talking to people and like having the stories and the green room interactions make those gigs because you're there for like 7 hours.
Yeah, with the wedding band stuff.
Yeah, but definitely. You're only playing for like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So it's like you get there and you sound check and it's like now we're just kind of hanging out in a room for 3.5 hours. So what are we gonna do?
Oh man, the best was we played a wedding with Rodney and Braden up in Greenville, and there's like the wedding venue and then this like bar restaurant that like I really love, like right next door. So we're like, all right, we're done sound checking, like. Nick, you're handling, like Nick, our sound guy. It's like, you're handling all the playback for the ceremony. So we're just going to go get a drink. You do your thing. See you in a little bit. That might have been a little irresponsible, but it was, turned out really well. It's really fun.
Man, New Year's Eve this year was pretty fun. I will say that. We were playing down in, I was playing with a party band out in Destin. And we got to we were at the harbor side thing they had. So we got through sound check and we drove down from Atlanta at like 6 o'clock that morning. We got there around 12 in the afternoon. And we sound checked, and we had until 10 that night. So we were just kind of walking around. Yeah, just hanging out in Destin, man. Like it was, and they had like a bus for us to hang out on, so that was cool. But I mean, it was a lot of fun. Like I got to go out to the restaurant with the guys and all that stuff. We really got to get closer as a band. But again, I feel like that counts as green room interaction. So all the crazy stories don't happen on the gigs. Yeah, at least for me.
And that's why the cool people get hired, is because like you don't want to hang out with somebody that kind of sucks for 6 hours,
Yeah, because and there's so many gigs that it's like people just like I feel like forego that. It's like they'll just like show up and just like put headphones in and it's like they're gone for like the next 3 hours, and the next time you feel like you're interacting with them is like on stage. Yeah, but then it feels foreign. It's like I've definitely had experiences where it's like I'm trying to like communicate with people and it feels like it's just easier with some than others because I've talked to them, which is so weird to think about.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like the people you play the best with are people you like, honestly, you kind of trust with your life. Like,
There's definitely an element of trust there for sure. Definitely
playing with Ayush, like, because like I said, I got my first regular gig with him outside of playing in Divino right after I graduated in my undergrad. So now I've been playing duo with him for 2 years almost, and it just feels like home. Like
Yeah.
anytime I'm getting called for a duo gig, that's going to be my first call because there's a comfort level to that. Like I'm not going to sit here and put myself in a situation where I'm going to stress about a gig just because I don't know who I'm playing with.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm playing with Nick Vlandis tonight. It's going to be great. Can't wait. So all that stuff, you can play with whoever you want to play with, but some connections are just like super, super deep, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that's such a special experience for sure.
Yeah.
We met around the same time too. Like, I don't know if we hadn't talked about FAQ yet, but just like coming out and meeting those guys, we all met at like jam sessions doing jazz stuff. I remember there was this dude named Andrew Zah, and he was in town whenever I first started coming out to the joint, and he had jam sessions at his house on Monday nights, and then we had the thing on Tuesdays at the joint. And his house sessions on Monday night is where I met Cole, and so we got Cole to start coming out to the joint from those sessions. And Ayush was starting to come out around the same time. Andre's starting to come out around the same time. And Chris was in undergrad with me. So we all just kind of ended up in the same room at the same time playing jazz.
Man. And
then we were rehearsing for a jazz gig, and Cole's like, oh, yeah, by the way, I write music.
Man.
Cool.
Dude, FAQ, man, I'm rooting for y'all so hard. Like, y'all are like one of my favorite bands in Columbia right now. Like, I love listening to you guys. You guys have such a good sound. Like, it's like Cole's amazing songwriting backed by like some of the most like musically capable people like in town. Like it's amazing. Like you guys could, I don't know. I'm rooting so hard for you guys.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we got a couple more questions. I want to ask you before the final question. What are a few pieces of advice you would give to a trumpet player that wants to like book more gigs and get more work? Because obviously like you like are like one of the busiest trumpet players in town. Booking like party band stuff, jazz stuff, duo stuff, all around. Even on like a pretty niche instrument and like, you know, in a not huge city like Columbia. So like I would love just to hear your thoughts on like how trumpet players could like get more work like that.
Well, like we were saying earlier, be cool. Like
Sure.
I think that's been the majority of why I get called for things, at least on initial contact. Either somebody knows somebody and they recommend me, or it's just like a matter of like I've played with you before and you think I'm capable of doing this thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think the technical aspect comes into it too much there. The only thing technically that I would say you really need to focus on is volume, because I don't know how much the people that ask you to play trumpet perceive how loud the trumpet is whenever they're asking for it.
Sure.
And then you need to not take it personally whenever people ask you to like turn down or whenever. You got to know when your wallpaper gigs are happening. Like whenever you're just the person that's like there to like play the ambiance music, you need to be okay with that. And that means that like that's not going to be the gig that you go and you play all your originals. And that's not going to be where you go and you start trying to play all these blazing solos or anything.
Yeah.
You're just going to play over a standard in an idiomatic way, and that is what it is. So I would say as long as you can get your ego out of the conversation, then it's fine.
Yeah.
Like that's been the majority of my work, just trying to figure out how to be musically contextual in most of the things that I'm playing.
Yeah.
And then to make sure I'm a good hang outside of that, so that whenever I'm being musically contextual, people don't feel weird to come up to talk to me afterwards and say something about that. Because even if I'm not doing things right, like I need you to be able to be comfortable enough with me to come up and be like, hey, like next time we play this, make sure you're not like going all out on this part of it. Okay, cool. And don't think I'm going to take that any type of way, because again, the ego can't be a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're providing the music for a purpose. So it's not necessarily about you at that point. If you want to, it can be like if you want to write your own music, you can definitely do like music's about you and your vehicle of expression and all that. But I think filtering when that's happening and when the thing is of you're providing a service for somebody or a product for somebody.
Yeah.
And you gotta take that into account. So,
Definitely.
Yeah. I would say that's my biggest points of advice for people.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
That's really, that's a really great thought. We had to figure that out kind of in the early days of Sam and Illia.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah, we started out, I feel like the early gigs that we played were like just these, we just do the most like dramatic songs. We'd be like in a Carolina Wingsdale just like screaming to like.
It was a lot, you know.
Yeah.
We had to figure it out. But
I was looking last night because I try to record most of my gigs. I don't actually listen to them, and I should. But there's
tough.
162 voice notes on my phone right now of just like things that I've done, and I just like hit record, and I'm sure at some point I'll go back and listen to it and just be like, man, like that was just like not a great idea, or that was a great idea. I just I don't know how much I'm trying to perceive all that stuff in the moment, but you getting a recording of it and listening to it on the back half of it is such a different experience, because then you become that consumer that you were providing for. And if you get taken aback by something that you're doing, maybe don't do that so much. Maybe don't do that in this context. stuff like that. So
yeah, absolutely. Well,
all right. Well, we just like to ask about like your favorite local spots at the end.
Ooh.
So if you're a coffee person, where are you going for coffee?
Man, I'm not really much of a coffee person.
You came in with a Celsius this morning. So.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that was more of a time thing than anything. But Drip has Andres and Cole play over there pretty often. So if I do go anywhere for coffee, it's probably going to be going to Drip just to go and check them out. Or Curiosity. Really like Curiosity.
I love Curiosity.
Yeah. They have this ghost pepper jack cheese, and it's so good.
Ooh.
oh, man.
It's very hot, but it's so
Ghost
good.
pepper jack cheese latte.
Whoa. More like a bagel, but yeah.
Okay, where are you gonna go for like a drink? Where are you gonna go hang out?
Probably Transmission. That's like my number one hang. Transmission, Art Bar, Joint, Aristocrat. Only if I'm playing there, but yeah.
That Transmission Joint, like
man.
bouncing back and forth, like
Yeah, man.
They complement each other really well. I feel
Absolutely.
like, you know?
Because it's like you can go and like, catch the music and then like the band goes on a break. Cool, I'm going to go play some pinball.
Exactly.
Come back.
Yeah, exactly.
The hard part gets to be whenever they hit capacity every night. So that's that's great. But
yeah,
good for
you
them.
have a line outside. You're
Yeah.
like, I'm happy for you, but also I want to be in there.
You know what I mean? And then it's like I was just like I couldn't even be in there. I was just on stage. I gotta, you know what I mean?
We got to keep the college kids away from Transmission so that like us adults can hang
gotta
there.
make it seem like a really uncool place.
Yeah.
We gotta wait till after May to drop this podcast.
Yeah.
That's funny.
What about like just dinner? Where are you gonna go?
Ooh. Oh man, I think some of my favorite food has come from some of the gigs that I played. Trevinia and Bistro on the Boulevard are like right up there at the top. That food is so good.
Nice.
I got like, and then Trevinia is so flexible with their menu too. They just kind of let you get whatever. Like you can like kind of do like a build your own pasta type thing.
Cool.
So it's pretty cool.
Man.
That is good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's
about it.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you being here, Nigel. Where can people find you online? What's your Instagram handle?
My Instagram's Nigel_R_O. I also have one that's NRO_music that I don't use yet. So
Gotcha.
Hopefully after I graduate, I use that. But
there we go.
We'll see. Yeah.
Nice. Well, thanks for being here, man. We appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
Thank you to the Jam Room Recording Studio for letting us track here. This beautiful, beautiful space. As you can see behind me, all these beautiful vintage amps. We love recording here. Thank you to Zach, our producer, behind the console back there in the control room. Making us sound good. Thank you to Jason Bozeman, a.k.a. JB-Creative Studio, making the video look incredible. He is so good at everything he does. We are Sam and Illia. You can find us online at Sam and ILLIA. We play events, gigs, band stuff. We have a jam. We're starting a wedding band called Golden Hour Groove. I think it's Golden Hour Groove Band on Instagram, right?
You made it, so you got to
I should know. I don't know, though. I forgot. Thanks for listening. Thank you to our patron, Chris Reed. If you want to support the podcast, it's less than a cup of coffee every month, $7 a month. Really goes a long way to helping us put this on. If you get some value out of listening to it or just want to support the gang, the homies. I think that's about everything. Did I miss? I don't think I missed anything.
I don't think you did.
Okay.
You got it.
Y'all have a great week or night or whenever you're listening to this. See you later.